Good afternoon, class. We are going to start our new topic in the course Apply Electrical and Electronic Instruments. If you remember in our previous sections, we were discussing about the measurement techniques, parameters of measuring instruments, properties of good measurement, types of measuring instruments, which were digital and analog. And now in continuation of that, we will be discussing about the comparison of analog and digital multimeter. The multimeter is the most common measuring instrument which you use to measure current, voltage, and resistance. This is the maybe the most widely used and most commonly used instrument in electronic labs, and you have used it for a long time. Partly you must have used the digital multimeter, but there are, as we discussed earlier, that instruments can be analog and digital. So analog multimeter also exists. The only difference is that it's not very common. We mostly use digital multimeter. So here are the two types, analog and digital. But what is the difference between the two? So here is a table which I have mentioned all the differences in the two types of multimeters. The analog on the left and digital on the right. Digital multimeter, you know that it shows the reading in a digital format in the form of digits. Digits means the numbers. So you can see on the screen, and there is a selector switch from where you select different parameters, and the two leads which you use for connections on a point where on the circuit you want to measure the current, voltage, or resistance. Analog, on the other hand, uh, overall look it looks a little bit big, but the main difference you will notice is the screen. It's not a screen actually on the analog multimeter. It's there is a scale given, and you will see there are not there is not one scale. There are many scales. You can see there are so many different. If you see, so many different curves are there. So for each scale there must be written some kind of unit. One could be for resistance, one could be for voltage, for current, for other things, and the numbers mentioned on them, they show the reading, and there is a needle which deflects on the scale, and where it will point, that will be your reading of the parameter which you are measuring. So uh, the minimum number and the maximum number, that represents the range of this meter. So this is how the display, or uh, the part where the analog meter is giving you reading. It's kind of a manual thing. It's a scale with the numbers and digits and divisions on them, and the needle deflects on that. It's pretty much like the speedometer in your car, the analog one. The needle moves onto a scale and you can see the speed of the car. So again, there is a selector switch, same like in the digital, and there are connecting leads. So this is the main difference, is basically it's a needle on the scale, and here on the digital it's numbers giving you the reading. So it uses a needle on scale to show the reading, while the digital shows the number. Analog could be difficult to read. Sometimes you have to be careful in reading the reading, because there are so many divisions, small divisions on the scale, and sometimes you have to calculate how far the needle has gone between the two numbers mentioned. But on digital it is easy to read. Analog can be sometimes fluctuating readings. Fluctuating means the needle could not be very stable, and it could be moving back and forth a little bit. So sometimes you feel difficulty to read the accurate reading from there. But here in digital, this is not the problem. You can see the fixed reading most of the time. Analog can say less accurate, but digital is more accurate because you see a fixed reading. But on analog, human error can occur uh, quite frequently if you are not reading the scale correctly and accurately. So usually it is analog is more sensitive. Why it is more sensitive? Because the changes reflect immediately. As soon as the parameter in the circuit change, the needle immediately deflects. So it quickly show the changes. While in digital they are usually less sensitive because the changes reflect only after defined resolution step. Resolution, if you remember, we discussed in previous lecture that resolution is the smallest amount of change that a meter can detect. So, so digital are, you can say, a bit less sensitive, but analog more sensitive because the needle is immediately deflecting as soon as the input is changing. On analog, the scale is set manually, or unit you have to look for the unit manually. But scale or unit is set and displayed automatically if provided. If you remember in our electronics lab, you see one blue color meter, digital multimeter, on which you switch the selector and you set it on. For example, if you are measuring resistance, and if you select the switch from 0 to 200, so it means it can measure resistance from 0 to 200 ohms. Okay, so you are actually manually selecting ohms on that selector switch. But if your resistance is in kilo ohms, it is big, it is more than 1 kilo ohm, so you need to change the selector position. So in some digital meters, you have to select the scale manually by the selector switch. But some digital meters, they provide this feature automatically that you don't have to set the unit, you don't have to set the scale. The meter do it automatically. You just connect the resistor with the meter, it will show you the number and the unit as well. It will show you it is either ohm or kilo ohm. But in a manual analog, you have to see it. See here you see many scales, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see many scales are there. So you need to look which scale is for resistance. Then you need to see the position of your needle, and then you will be able to find out what is the reading. So it's a bit, you can say, more tricky. So analog usually they don't offer any additional features. Usually no additional features are provided, but in digital, as the technology is progressing, they are giving more and more additional features like temperature measurement, root mean square value, data hold. Data hold means if the reading is fluctuating, you can press the hold button so that it shows you a fixed reading on the screen so that it is easy for reading. So digital can provide additional features. Analog are cheap now because they are old technology and less features, but digital are expensive because of new technology and more features. So this was a brief comparison between analog multimeter and digital multimeter. So let me stop the recording and open question answer session.